The boardroom smelled faintly of old money and arrogance, a place where deals were made and souls were quietly sold. The long mahogany table gleamed under the soft glow of the chandelier, reflecting the two families seated across from each other. The Jones, cold, composed, and intimidating in their tailored suits, and then yours, polite smiles hiding the quiet tension beneath. Your father's voice broke the silence. It's a perfect match, Mr. Jones. Our partnership will strengthen both corporations and, of course, our families. Across the table, Jungkook sat with his fingers loosely clasped, his jaw set. He looked every bit the higher he was groomed to be sharp, controlled, and impossible to reach. Only his eyes betrayed him. Dark with restrained fury, Mr. June, his father, smiled in a way that carried more command than warmth. I agree. Wine is a respectable young woman. This union will secure our future and bring stability to the company's next generation. The air thickened, you lowered your gaze, feeling every pair of eyes on you, a business proposal disguised as a marriage. Then Jungkook finally spoke. I don't do charity, mister. Especially not in the form of marriage. The words cut like ice, blunt and unapologetic. Your father's hand tightened around his pen while your mother inhaled sharply, trying to mask her embarrassment behind a practiced smile. You felt the sting not from his words, but from the quiet certainty behind them. He meant it. Mr. Jones' voice was calm but heavy with warning. That's enough, Jungkook. Jungkook didn't flinch. His gaze shifted briefly toward you, cold, assessing as though trying to find a flaw that would justify his disgust before returning to his father. You can't expect me to marry someone I don't even know. Wine's father leaned forward. Then go to know her. You'll find she's far from ordinary. A low chuckle escaped, Chungkook bitter, humorless. I'm sure she isn't, but I'm not in the market for a stranger, Mr. Wine's father. I'm in the business of running companies, not playing house. His father's tone sharpened. You are in the business of obeying orders. You will marry her, that it is set. The finality in that voice left no room for argument. The silence that followed was suffocating, a silence that sealed your fate before you even understood the cost. You looked up at Jungkook again. He wasn't looking at you anymore. His attention had already drifted to the glass wall overlooking the city. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his stillness that whispered, You are an inconvenience I learned to tolerate. You forced a small, polite smile because that's what daughters of businessmen do. They smile while their lips are negotiated across a polished table. Inside, though, a cold thought took root. This wasn't the beginning of a marriage, it was the signing of a contract between two empires, and you were the clause neither side cared to read carefully. Outside, the city lights flickered like dying stars, and somewhere deep inside, a storm began to stir. The wedding was everything a magazine would envy. Chandeliers dripping with gold light, the scent of white roses filling the marble hall, and cameras flashing like fireworks. To the world, it was the union of two powerful families, a spectacle of wealth and perfection, but beneath the glitter there was silence, the kind that gnaws at the heart. He stood beside Jungkook, your hand resting loosely in his. His touch was cold, motionless, as though he was holding a business contract, not a bride. His face, stoic and unreadable, gave nothing away. The priest's voice echoed softly, blessing a love that didn't exist. When it was time for vows, you spoke with a trembling calm, words you barely believed in. Jungkook's reply was crisp, formal, devoid of warmth. I do. Two words that sealed a lifetime of distance. The applause rose, the cameras clicked, but he didn't look at you once. Even during the photographs, his gaze was fixed somewhere beyond you, the chandelier, the crowd, anywhere but your eyes. His mother stood beside him, smiling proudly for the guests. She looked at you once, a practiced smile hiding quiet disdain before linking her arm through her son's letter that evening. As you walked down the grand stairs of the June mansion for the first time as his wife, the silence followed you like a shadow. The marble beneath your heels echoed with emptiness. The staff bowed respectfully, yet you could feel their curiosity, their pity. When the bedroom doors closed that night, he didn't even pretend to care. You can have the main room, I'll use the guest suite across the hall. You wanted to ask why, though you already knew the answer, but his tone wasn't harsh, just final. Like a verdict delivered without emotion. Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm of your life became mechanical. You woke up to an empty side of the bed, meals were shared in silence, the clinking of cutlery, the only conversation. He was always polite, always distant. He never raised his voice, never argued, never touched you unless absolutely necessary. Everything between you existed in a gray space, not hatred, not love, just quiet indifference. Sometimes, when you waited for him at dinner, the clock ticking too loudly in the quiet dining hall, he would arrive late, composed as ever, his style loosened but his expression unreadable. You don't have to wait for me. This marriage doesn't require formalities. He forced a small smile, though it barely reached your eyes. I wasn't waiting. I just didn't want the food to go cold. He nodded once, his gaze flickering toward you just briefly before returning to his plate. The nights were the hardest. You had heard him come home late, the sound of his footsteps pausing outside your door before fading away down the hall. There was something almost cruel in that hesitation, a reminder that he chose not to enter. In the mornings, the staff would find you in the garden, your fingers brushing the petals of the roses his mother had planted. They were beautiful, carefully tended, untouchable, and gold, much like your marriage. And somewhere in that mentioned stillness, you begin to learn that silence could hurt louder than shouting ever could. The June Corporation's anniversary celebration was everything you expected elegant, overdone, and suffocating. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across a sea of expensive smiles. Waiters glided through the crowd carrying champagne, floors, and the sound of polite laughter echoed through the grand ballroom. You stood quietly beside Jungkook, your hand resting against your clutch, pretending to belong among these people who spoke in profits and mergers instead of feelings. He looked perfect, as always, sharp, black suit, perfectly tailored, his expression as unreadable as a marble statue. Every woman who passed gave him a glance too long. Every businessman greeted him with respect. To the world, he was the golden heir. To you, he was the man who hadn't looked at you properly since the wedding. When his mother appeared, the crowd seemed to part for her, dressed in a silk gown, her diamonds glinting under the lights. She wore authority like a crown. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes when she looked at you. Wine, dear, you look lovely tonight. You bowed your head slightly. Thank you, mother. Her smile wasn't just enough to hurt. Though I must say you should really start learning how to handle public appearances better. A wife reflects her husband. And Jungkook's position requires finesse. The people around her chuckled politely. You forced a soft laugh, though the sting in her words burned beneath your skin. You wanted to disappear to escape that circle of quiet humiliation, but the moment that broke you came later during Mr. Jones' speech. As he praised Jungkook's achievements and the company's growth, Mrs. Jones leaned closer to a group of guests, voice intentionally low but loud enough for you to hear. Of course, not everyone brings value to the family. Some are just burdens, I suppose. But we all have to make sacrifices for the sake of reputation. The word burden hit like a slap. You didn't need to glance at her to know who she meant. Everyone knew. You felt your throat tighten, your vision blur slightly under the shimmering lights. Jungkook stood beside you, unmoving, his eyes fixed on the stage, his jaw tense, but he said nothing. Not a word, not a glance, not a defense. You smiled as you always did, pretending it didn't matter, but something inside you cracked quietly, invisibly beyond repair. When the night ended, the applause fading into background noise, you excused yourself and walked out to the balcony. The cold night air bite at your skin, a welcome relief from the suffocating luxury inside. Below the city stretched endlessly, loud, alive, free. Behind you, the doors opened. You didn't turn. His voice came, calm as ever. You shouldn't walk out like that. People will talk. You laughed softly, bitterly. Let them, they already do. He stepped closer, but not enough for comfort, just enough to make you feel the tension between you. You heard her, didn't you? It doesn't matter what she says. You turned finally, meeting his gaze. It matters when you let her. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes guilt, maybe, or frustration. It's gone too quickly to reach. He sighed, losing his tie. You're making a scene, wine. He smiled faintly, stepping back. No, Jungkook, I'm finally realizing I don't belong in one. You walked away before he could reply, your heels echoing against the marble floor. He didn't call after you. And that was the moment you decide if he could live without you, you would learn to do the same. The distance began quietly, no shouts, no slammed doors, no dramatic ending, just silence. The kind of silence that seeps into the walls and stays there. You stopped greeting him when he came home, stopped waiting at the dinner table, stopped trying to start small conversations that would never finish. Your room became a museum of pretense, untouched designer dresses, unopened perfumes, gifts from your parents sent to keep appearances. The room smelled faintly of roses and loneliness. You had grown used to it. Jungkook noticed at first he didn't care or pretended not to, but weeks passed and something about your quietness started to bother him. You no longer tried to please him, you no longer sought his attention, you simply existed as if he wasn't there. One evening, he found you in the garden, kneeling beside the roses, your fingers brushing gently over their petals. The sunset painted your face in soft gold, and for a moment he forgot how to breathe. He looked too calm, too far away. You have been spending a lot of time out here. It's quiet, the roses don't judge. He folded his arms, standing just a few feet away. Neither do I. No, you just don't care enough to. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. You skipped dinner again. I wasn't hungry. You have been saying that a lot lately. Then maybe stop asking. He took a slow breath, the kind he used to calm himself before business meetings. But this wasn't business. This was something else, something unfamiliar. Are you avoiding me? Avoiding you? She let out a soft, humorless laugh. Jungkook, you built a wall the moment we married. I just stopped trying to climb it. He looked at you for a long moment, eyes flickering between anger and confusion. You're making this harder than it has to be. Harder for who? You? Because you seem perfectly fine living like we don't exist. You think I don't notice things. You don't even look at me anymore. Would it matter if I did? His lips parted, but no words came out. His eyes dropped to your wrist, a faint bruise, probably from bumping into the counter, and his fingers twitched, as though he wanted to reach for you but didn't dare. I didn't mean for it to be like this. Yes, you did. You just didn't think I would stop caring. Your tone wasn't bitter, it was empty. Resigned, you stood brushing dirt off your hands and walked past him. He turned slightly as if to stop you, but the words never came. That night he couldn't sleep. The sound of the rain outside blended with the faint hum of music from your room, a sad, distant tone that carried through the hall. He closed his eyes and realized for the first time what your silence truly meant. You hadn't left him. You had simply stopped waiting for him to love you, and now he was the one haunted by the quiet. The night was calm, the kind of quiet that carried unspoken things. The city below sparkled faintly, its hum softened by distance. You sat on the balcony, a light blanket draped over your shoulders, your diary open across your lap. The pages fluttered softly in the evening breeze as your pen traced your thoughts, thoughts you couldn't say aloud. He speaks to me like I'm a stranger. I have stopped waiting for warmth, yet I still crave it. Maybe I'm foolish for wanting to be seen by a man who looks at everything except me. Maybe silence has become our only language. You paused, your fingers trembling slightly before writing again. I don't hate him. I wish I did. It would make this easier. The wind whispered around you, carrying the faint scent of rain. You were so lost in thought that you didn't notice the soft sound of footsteps behind you, the quiet tread of someone who really came looking for you. Jungkook stood there, his figure half lit by the moonlight. His gaze fell on the diary before he could stop himself. The handwriting was neat, the words raw and unguarded, a side of you he had never taken the time to know. He read each line silently, guilt crawling slowly up his throat. Then he saw it a single drop of water darkening the paper's edge, a tear. His breath hitched. He hadn't meant to intrude, but something about the sight you sitting alone, crying quietly over a man who had given you nothing toward him. He cleared his throat softly, a quiet cough breaking the stillness. You startled, quickly snapping the diary shut, your eyes wide and defensive. I didn't hear you. Chunguk's voice was low, Teddy, don't hide it, I read everything. You froze, the diary trembled slightly in your hands as shame washed through you, not because of what you wrote, but because he saw you in your most honest form. Oh, he stepped closer, his voice quieter now. You wrote that you don't hate me. After everything I have done, you still don't. You swallowed, forcing yourself to meet his gaze. Hate takes energy, Chungo. I don't have any left to give. For a long moment, neither of you spoke. The air between you carried the weight of months of silence. Then, unexpectedly, his expression softened, the sharpness in his features replaced by something fragile. I have been a coward, he said finally. I let my pride run our lives. I thought keeping distance would protect me from something I didn't understand. He paused, his eyes lowering, but all I did was destroy the only person who tried to stay. He nodded slowly. Maybe, but if time could be undone, I would go back to that night, the party. I should have said something. I should have defended you. His voice broke just slightly, though he masked it with a quiet breath. He stood there alone, humiliated because of me, and I just stood there, pretending it didn't matter. I thought silence would keep things steady, but silence became the sharpest thing between us. The vulnerability in his tone was disarming. You had never seen him despair, stripped of control. You can't fix what's already broken, Jungkook. Some things just change. He took another step closer, close enough that you could see the sincerity in his eyes. Maybe I can't fix it, but I want to try just once. Not for the company, not for our parents, for us. He looked at him, uncertain, torn between the ache of everything he had done and the honesty in his voice now. And if it doesn't work, then I'll live knowing I at least tried to deserve the woman I have already lost. The wind blew softly again, carrying away the tension. For the first time, you didn't see him as the cold man you married. You saw a man learning to feel, to regret, to reach for what he had taken for granted. You placed the diary aside and whispered, your voice barely above the wind. One chance, Jungkook, don't waste it. He nodded, his jaw trembling slightly as he breathed out, not in victory but in quiet relief. And under the dim light of the moon, the distance between you both began slowly, hesitantly to close. The change didn't begin overnight, it came quietly like dawn bleeding into the dark. At first, you thought it was coincidence, the extra cup of tea left on your side of the table, the blanket adjusted around your shoulders when you had fallen asleep on the couch. But then you started to notice he was trying. One morning, as you walked into the dining room, you found Jungkook already there. He looked up, a soft and familiar warmth flickering in his eyes. You like jasmine tea, right? I asked them to restock it. You hesitated before sitting down. You remembered. I have started remembering a lot of things lately. Days passed and small gestures began painting over old wounds. Dinner conversations that didn't end in silence, laughter that didn't feel like an intrusion. He began accompanying you to charity events, walking beside you instead of ahead. But the real shift came the night his mother tried to speak again, that same sharp tone she had used months ago. She's still not enough, mother. You will not speak to my wife like that again. The silence that followed was thick, almost sacred. For the first time, you felt protected not out of duty, but out of choice. Later that night, as the city lights shimmered outside your window, Chungu came to you quietly. He didn't speak, just wrapped his arms around you, resting his chin atop your head. I can't erase the past, but I can make the rest of it worth staying for. You didn't answer. You didn't need to. His sincerity was louder than any promise he could have made. He didn't change overnight. He healed piece by piece, and this time he chose love. Not because he had to, but because he finally wanted to.